still cruising over here in South Dakota. In this video, I wanted to just go over the market a little bit. Just have a little talking video. I've been distracted a little bit with buying this new truck and then doing some oil field stuff where I thought the money was going to be pretty good, and it turned out not to be. And so we're back out over on the road on the flatbed side. And so the flatbed spot market is something I know pretty well. It's always been where I, can make some money. And I've always gotten these distractions with the local, the local oil field or local whatever, and I have this idea that I can be home and make money and home every night, and it just never works out. And I don't know why. But it seems like the spot market, OTR spot flatbed seems to be my sweet spot. Seems to be where we can really, get comfortable and make some money. And so let's talk about it. So I've been let's see, I've been on this hitch. I left the house. Dang it, I wish I had these numbers. Let me look at the calendar here. I'll tell you when it was. Let's see, it's the 12th. So I left on the 4th. On Thursday the 4th, I picked up some lumber in Saratoga, Wyoming. Took that to Lincoln, Nebraska. That load paid $2,000. Delivered that on Friday. Repicked out of Iowa some bricks. That went to Casper, Wyoming. That load paid $18.25. Delivered that. I actually delivered that on Saturday, so that was the 13th. It was a rare case where flatbed. It was a job site and they were behind, so they were working on Saturday. So, and then I reset on Sunday. So that would have been the 4th. The 5th I delivered in Lincoln. The 6th I delivered in Casper. And then the 7th I reset in Casper, Wyoming. The 8th I picked up in Casper, Wyoming, going to Chicago. Delivered in Chicago on the 10th, on Wednesday. I recorded that. I got delayed on my delivery, and I had pre-booked a load that was a big deadhead, but I was delivering at 8 in the morning in Chicago, so I thought, oh, there's, what could possibly go wrong? I'll do this big deadhead. Well, they held me for like 3.5 hours. Because, I got there at 8, like my appointment said, and they didn't release me until, I think, after 11 and 11:30. So ultimately, I missed my pickup that day on Wednesday. I called the broker, told him what was going on. He's like, well, we can reschedule it till morning if you still want the load. And I said, well, I don't know if I told this to the broker, but I was thinking this. Well, if I can't pick it up today, I really don't want the load. But as we all know, if you have your authority, you want to avoid canceling loads, because brokers will note that in their internal system, and you may not be able to negotiate rates next time because you just bailed on a load last time, right? So I said, yeah, I'd love to pick it up in the morning. It was a good load for me today. It'll be a good load for tomorrow. And it is. I mean, it's a profitable load. So I'm on that load right now. I picked it up in Wisconsin, in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. So Chicago to Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, it's like 226 mile deadhead. This load's going to Tacoma. Booked at $42.50 for, and I'm not gonna remember the mileage deliver this load on the 15th. So that's what I've done so far. The market average for flatbed right now, according to DAT, which is the line haul average, is 206 a mile. Of course, that would be no deadhead included. And the same DAT for van is $1.67. So, you know, when we look at those numbers, and you know, every number we look at is a little different. You know, FreightWaves looks at a different number. DAT looks at line haul excluding 550 miles and less. Truck Stop looks at average posted rate, which is just worthless. I don't even know why they look at that, but that's what they look at. So everybody kind of looks at a different number, but the ultimate thing that we have to look at is what are guys like me able to produce on the spot market, booking loads off the load board, right? What are we able to actually do? Because what the data says and what we're actually able to do with our deadhead, those are two different things. So that's what I've been able to do. When I get to, this is an estimate, but when I get to Tacoma, so I'm kind of trying to speak up because when I climb hills, the engine noise is a little bit stronger in here. And I don't have I'm just using the camera's mic because every time I try to use the mic, the Bluetooth mic, it comes and goes and it's just a mess. It's never solid audio. I don't know why. I need to get a dedicated Bluetooth mic for this camera, I guess. What was I saying? So when I get to Tacoma with this load, I think I'll be, I did the math, I think it'd be like $1.97 or somewhere under $2. So normally when I look at the DAT line haul average, I can normally hit that average with my deadhead. So normally my all-in miles can be pretty dang close to that DAT average. That's why I look at that number more than anything else. Because almost through the months, I can almost always look back at my hitch numbers and always say, you know, I came within about 5 cents of that DAT number. Right now it's 206 a mile for flatbed, so I'm pretty sure when I get done with my hitch, I can be sitting somewhere a little over 2. Now, it fluctuates a little bit depending on what I focus on. If I focus on long hauls, like last hitch with Jeff, I was focusing on long hauls because I didn't have the time or energy to be booking a load every day. So I was focusing on long hauls because we could get Jeff booked for 4 or 5 days solid and never have to touch it again, never have to look at another load, never have to book another, you know, do more paperwork and all that. So I was kind of, you know, leaning towards the long hauls just for ease in the office, if we want to say it that way. And I think we came in at like, the last hitch, I think we came in at like $1.93 on his hitch. So of course, focusing on long hauls, we're going to come in a little below that. And that's with deadhead, of course. So if we look at like on that hitch, if we look at loaded, I think we were at 222 or something in the low 2s. So that's so when we look at that number, I think that's a very good number. I think that even in the dry van market, I think that if I was pulling a dry van right now, I would probably say the same thing. I can normally come in right at, after deadhead, the $1.67. Now, in the dry van space, you would be forced to do better. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think you can survive at $1.67. So you would have no choice but to boost that number by doing nothing but short hauls and being extremely picky and being very, very reluctant to deadhead, right? In other words, we'd have to be very careful to only go to big cities so that we know our deadhead can be small. In other words, we wouldn't really want to be delivering to Billings, Montana, because from there, what's our deadhead look like? Pretty dramatic in a lot of cases, right? And that's what I mean. We'd have to stay in the Dallases and in the big cities or near the big cities so that we can reduce our deadhead. And we'd have to go short. We'd have to stay in the Midwest probably. We'd have to maybe even, bounce between Dallas and Houston and Chicago and to try to keep that deadhead down and that rate high. In other words, we'd be forced to not settle for $1.67. Because when I was pulling dry van, this was last year, when the market was pretty similar last year, that was what I had to do. It was about $1.65, I think, was the DAT average. And when I ran all over and just took long hauls, I came in under that. So if I was really careful, I could beat that. And it's the same with flatbed. If I keep the flatbeds in the south, east of the Mississippi and south of the Mason-Dixon, and just do short, just do short haul after short after short haul, we can beat that 206 by a long shot. We could probably come in at 260, 270 a mile, all miles. So we know we can beat that number if we do shorts, but when we have the luxury of not having to beat that number to survive, we have the luxury of going a little longer and increasing our revenue. So anyway, I think from what I've seen, I think that's the case. So if you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at getting into business or switching from van to flat or reefer to van or whatever, or you're thinking about getting your authority because you're leased to Landstar or something, similar like that, and you're wanting to know what you're actually able to do, I would look at that DAT number, and you can find that by going to DAT.com and then going to their resource page and then blogs, and then pick the equipment type you're looking at. And that seems to be the best number that I've found to do budgets and all that sort of thing. So when you're doing budgets based on, you don't know what you can produce, just go with that DAT number. And what I found, if you're careful, you can beat that number enough to where you can hit that number with your deadhead. That being said, I think running a company at $1.67 a mile in the dry van sector is extremely hard. I think that is going to be problematic. Anybody looking to get their own authority right now and run flatbed or run dry van, man, you've got to thread the needle. You've got to first of all have no truck and trailer payment. You've got to get incredibly good fuel mileage. You have to be able to have access to the entire load board, which is nearly impossible when you have a brand new MC number, right? There's a guy on YouTube I follow, Trucking the 7 Cs, and he's kind of proving this point, and this is where I'm getting this from a lot of the time. Having a brand new MC number, you are limited to a few brokers, meaning you don't have access to the entire load board. I mean, you can see it, but you can't book them. So that's what I mean by you've got to thread the needle. It's going to be hard. I think that if you're going into business with a brand new authority, Man, it's tough. It's very tough. You can do it. You've got to have your personal finances under control to where you don't need to take very much money. In other words, you can live on less than what a driver's salary would pay you. If you can do that, you could manage it. You could be successful in the business. The question is you personally would be better off to just go work for Creed or Swift or, any old, drop and hook company. So yeah, I think that right now, with the rates the way they are, it is very, very tight. And so that's just where we are today, right? If you're looking at starting your own authority and you say, okay, what sector can I go into that isn't tight? Well, there is none, first of all, but flatbed's better. So we could make a better argument for flatbed. Starting your own authority, you're still not going to have access to the whole load board. So that's going to be a problem. But at least flatbed, we're starting at a higher number. So if you're able to maintain that average of 206 in the flatbed sector, while, not having access to every single load on the board because you have to work with the TQLs, you have to work with the brokerages that work with brand new authority, at least you're starting at a higher number of 206, and you can come off of that a bit and slide and still do a little better. So I'd have to say, and I hate to encourage people to jump into the flatbed market and be my competitor, we don't need any more flatbeds out here. Don't go into flatbed business. I don't want you as my competitor. But if we just look at the numbers, we have to conclude that the flatbed is about the only place you can be profitable. And then we get into, okay, are you physically fit enough to do the flatbed work? Do you even want to? All the tarping and chaining and, taking the risk of the load securement, all the time that takes, buying the equipment, learning how to do all the work. Assuming that you know how to flatbed already, assuming that you're experienced in both flatbed and van, and assuming that you're physically fit enough to do it, then I'd have to say, yeah, your only choice here is flatbed. But for a lot of people, that is not a choice. If you are not in very good physical condition and you can't be climbing up on an 8-foot load, right, 13 foot off your trailer, and you don't want to risk falling and breaking your neck, there's a lot of reasons not to flatbed, right? There's a lot of reasons why you can't do that and you wouldn't want to. But for people that are able to and have the knowledge, I think it's kind of the only one that makes sense right now. So that's my 2 cents on the market, how we're doing today. I think it's tight in every sector. I am not out here saying we're making a ton of profit. I can claim that we are making profit. I'm paying myself a pretty good wage. I'm paying my driver 73 cents per mile and still pulling profit out of his operation. So that being said, I don't think I pay myself that much. I think I'm paying myself more like 50 cents per mile just because of what my salary's set at. But I could pay myself 73 cents per mile and the company would still make profit. So we are pulling profit. It's tight, and some months we don't pull profit. So it's certainly it's still tight. I still have to be very, very careful to thread the needle. There are still big mistakes that you could make and screw it all up. It's not a no-brainer. But if I had 2 dry vans running right now, holy cow. I mean, right now, well, a few months ago when I looked at my numbers, my break-even point was $1.74 per mile. That was paying my salary and my driver's salary and everything the company purchased, right? That was even with staff, office staff, paying office staff. And at the time I had 2 office staff. That was with all the breakdowns, all the tires, everything that the company purchased. Money in versus money out. So money out equaled to $1.74 a mile, I want to say. $1.74, $1.73, somewhere there. And it's changed since then. It changes, all throughout the year. Costs go up, costs go down, whatever. But at that point, I think it was the 6-month point. So I think that was in July. I had looked from the start of the year to end of June, and that was my cost to run a truck. To run a mile was $1.74, we'll call it. Well, if I just pull the plug on the flatbeds and start pulling dry van, my cost would not go down dramatically. I could lower the driver salary from, say, 74 cents per mile to maybe 65, somewhere in there. So that would lower it about 10 cents. Say we could lower it 8-9 cents a mile by paying the driver less. I would get better fuel mileage, but that would only really add about 2 to 3 cents per mile. So really at the most, we might be able to lower that cost per mile maybe 10 to 15 cents, and that's pushing it, right? All the other expenses are going to be there, right? We're still going to have insurance, we're still going to have office staff, we're still going to have truck and trailer payments. In fact, in that case, I'd have another trailer payment if I went and bought newer used dry vans. Now, assuming I sold the flatbeds to purchase the dry vans and committed suicide, so to speak, by getting rid of my flatbeds, then I guess I could probably purchase the dry vans for cash, trade them effectively. So we might not go up much in equipment costs. So, that's something I always think about. If we could lower costs by 10 cents and keep the revenue at $1.70, can we beat that by 3 cents per mile every single month, the DAT number, and do $1.70, and we can lower our $1.74 all-in cost down to $1.64, for example, maybe even $1.60? I think it's possible, but we're looking at a 10 cent per mile profit, and that's threading the needle. That's doing everything right. Whereas right now we're able to maintain about $1.90, $1.95 all in between both flatbeds, and our break even is $1.74, right? So and I think going forward we can push that. Now here's what ends up happening. When I look at my all-in miles for the year on me driving, it was like $2.13 a mile. When I look at Jeff's, it's down around $1.90, $1.92, $1.91, somewhere in there. I could pull those numbers together and do a video on that, but that's my estimate of where we're at. So when you combine the two, we're probably sitting around $2 a mile. And the reason that's different is because for the driver, I'm opting for high mileage loads to give that driver good salary. For me, because I'm the owner and I have a fixed salary per month, no matter how many miles I drive, I look to optimize my rate per mile. I don't really care too much if I get a high rate per mile, but I'm sitting Saturday and Sunday and waiting to deliver on Monday, right? Because it doesn't really cost me much. So so long as the rate per mile that I got was good. On the driver's side, that is a problem because we pay the driver to sit. The way I pay the drivers, I pay the driver to sit when that happens. So my cost is going up when I do that. And also, we're unable to, even though I do pay the driver something for those times that the schedule got screwed up, right? It's nowhere near what he would have made by driving 600 miles on Saturday and resetting Sunday in this scenario. So we end up not paying the driver what we could, therefore not maximizing the driver's salary, therefore making the driver, if we do that consistently, that driver is going to be looking around. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm getting a high cost rate per mile, but I'm only getting $6,000 a month, right? Well, I can go over here and make $7,000 a month. Because to a driver, if he's away from his family for 2 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, he doesn't really care if he's sitting in a truck stop for 3 of those days or driving for 6 days and off for 1. He's away from his family for the same amount of time. So what's the maximum amount of dollars that he can make? And so my point there is that I opt to do longer hauls. I opt to do things that don't make sense on a dollar per mile basis, but make sense on a revenue basis and a driver's salary view. So when we're looking at driver salary, we do things that probably wouldn't make sense for an owner to do, and that's why you see that difference. You see my rate per mile always higher than Jeff's because I'm willing to do things that would be bad for a driver, but good for an owner. Right? So, and that would still occur in dry van, right? I would still be doing things based on getting Jeff's salary high and taking a hit on the company's profits, because we have to make sure that we keep our driver, right? In other words, it doesn't do the driver any good if he's away from his family for 30 days a month and he makes $4,500, but the company made $250 a mile. He could care less what the company made. He's quitting his job and going to Crete, going to Swift, going to Heartland, going to, who knows, anywhere, right? Or he's quitting his job and going to go work at Walmart. Not as a driver, as a greeter at that point. You know what I mean? So you have to make sure that your driver is getting a high revenue, not revenue, but high wage per month. If he's away from his family, he deserves to be paid, regardless of your rate per mile. And so I think we would struggle to do that in drive-in. And we'd end up getting to the point where we really are unable to keep up with a rate per mile that actually is profitable. Because if we just look at the numbers, we are dropping under the DAT line haul number on the driver's side, because I'm opting to do things that increase driver salary and also decrease every time we book a longer haul, say Atlanta, Georgia to Seattle, that's 3, 4, 5 days that I don't have to do anything, and my office doesn't have to do anything. So it decreases our workload in the office. Anyway, we come under that number. So if we come under that number in dry van, yikes, that's a problem, because we're right at. We can't go any lower. $1.67? Are you kidding me? We can't go lower than that. And if we start coming in at $1.58, I think it's pretty obvious to everybody. How in the world are you going to not go bankrupt at that number? You can't. I can't make an excuse for why I could be profitable at $1.58. That is insane. I can start to see $1.67. We might be able to break even and even have a little bit of profit at the end of the year if everything goes right. We minimize breakdowns, we maximize fuel mileage, and we minimize driver pay. Unfortunately, as much as I like to pay drivers a lot, it's either we pay the driver virtually nothing, low wage, and 65 cents a mile is a pretty high wage for driving. We might be able to move that down to 60 and still be competitive in the marketplace. I don't know. I know a lot of the mega fleets are sitting right around that 60, 65, so I feel like you'd have to compete with that. But maybe you could compete because the mega fleets park the trucks a lot. I've heard stories of, the people in the mega fleets, yeah, they get 62, 63, 65, 68 cents a mile, but they end up waiting a lot for loads because they're dealing with customers, direct customers. So they end up, we need you to pick up this load, but you can't pick it up until 3 days from now, and you're only 500 miles away. So you get dispatched on that load, and you're like, great, I'm going to go drop my empty, and I can't pick up the loaded until 3 days from now, and I'm 1 day away. That means you're going to get a reset times 2. They're going to get 2 resets back to back, and they don't pay for that. So you might be able to compete. A small business like mine might be able to compete at 60 cents a mile, a fairly low number, because we can maximize mileage. Because last month, Jeff did 14,000 miles. It's 14,300 and something. Now, he didn't go home much that month because he's got vacation coming this month, a lot of it, and so he opted to basically not go home at all. He was home for some 34 resets, and he was home for some extended 34 resets. I think for Labor Day he got home, and then he had at least Labor Day off, if not 2 days off that weekend. I don't remember. But he's been home, but not really on home time. It's pretty much just been 34 resets the whole month of, that was August. But he did quite well on a mileage standpoint. Now, if we look at his average for the year, I think he's been averaging like 11,500 miles per month. And so if we could do that with the dry van and pay the driver 60 cents a mile, that might compete with the megas at 65 or 68 cents per mile, because they're only able to do 9,000 or 10,000 miles a month, or I don't know. I don't know where that number is, but so anyway, that's my 2 cents on the market and where we're at. I don't want competition in the flatbed market because we have enough of it. There are tons of flatbeds out here, and the good loads go off the load board like that. I mean, you've got to call on that load within a minute of it being posted, or it's gone. That tells me there's a ton of flatbed drivers out here, and we certainly don't need more of them. So I'm not trying to encourage anybody to go into business and be my competitor, but I'm just trying to share numbers. And if you're looking at starting your authority and going van, I would say you're probably going to fail. There's a good chance that's not going to work for you. Whereas if you did the same thing with a flatbed, there's a lot of excuses I could make where it probably would be successful. You'll probably be successful. This is again assuming you can do it, the physical part of it, and assuming you have the desire. And if you're not, here's the thing. If you think about this and you think, oh, flatbed sounds fun, except for I would hate to tarp. If you're not excited about the workload of it, I wouldn't do it. because if tarping and strapping and securing the freight is burdensome to you, you're not going to like it. And it's probably not worth doing something you don't like. You'd probably be better off just to go be a company driver somewhere, do the drop and hook thing, you know, get comfortable and do what you want to do. If you're constantly scared or nervous or hate the tarping and the load securement part of it, or then don't do it, because you're just going to hate it. And you have to like what you do. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the flatbed, the van. I don't know much about reefer. I do know that the reefer has the least amount of loads on the spot market. Depending on the day, dry van and flatbed. And sometimes flatbed is the highest available amount of loads on the spot market, even over dry van, because there's a lot more dry vans on the road, but a lot more of those dry vans are under contract and not spot, whereas a much higher percentage of flatbed are spot market, always will be spot market, always intended to be spot market, never going to go contract, right? So something to think about. The flatbed market is profitable. I'm reporting profits, maybe not every month, but on a quarter basis I'm able to report profits, small ones. And certainly you could fail in the flatbed market. It's not good enough where it's a no-brainer. You certainly could fail. You've got to get your shit in order. But if you do, I think you could be much better off than dry van. That's kind of a no-brainer. We got 206 to $1.67. We've got nearly, what is that? 39 cents per mile difference between the two of them. I mean, and as an owner, once you get the equipment set up, you're really not going to have much more cost of operation to run run flatbed than dry van. Dry van, of course, is the cheapest thing you can do. It's easy on tires, good on fuel mileage. Vans are cheap to rent and cheap to purchase, more so than flatbeds. So everything, all your costs will be lower in the dry van sector. But when we look at it, really not 39 cents worth. You're not going to save 39 cents by running a dry van over a flatbed, and that's the difference in rates. So, there you have it. I mean, that's say it costs you 10 cents a mile more to run flatbed, but your rates are 39 cents higher. So that's my 2 cents, guys. Please comment. Am I full of shit here? Let me know what you guys think. This is all, kind of around the spot market. I know there's guys out there that have contracts and they're getting $27 a mile and doing great hauling dry van. I know that. But for everybody who is running the spot market, pretty much 100% load board stuff like I am, what are you guys able to see? What do you think? And kind of give me some comments. Let me know what you guys think.